Why do people truly fall in love with you? Is it the way you speak? The dreams you carry quietly in your chest? The mask you wear so well? Or perhaps it is something far deeper, buried not in your smile or your resume, but in the recesses of your shadow, the part of you you barely know. Carl Jung once suggested something quietly radical, that when we fall in love, what we often fall for is not the person themselves, but a projection, a reflection of our deepest needs, our longings, and, yes, our forgotten parts. Love, in this sense, becomes not just attraction, but revelation. It is not always about who the other person is, but who they awaken within us. And so, if people fall in love with you, it may only be for two reasons. 1, because you reflect the light they yearn for, or 2, because you mirror the wounds they have not yet faced. Think about that. The first reason makes us feel proud, chosen, desired, meaningful. The second one? It stings, because it forces us to confront something we rarely want to admit. That love is not always about wholeness. Sometimes it is about pain in disguise. In the modern world of dating apps and curated identities, where the algorithm tells us who we are compatible with, this insight feels uncomfortable. We like to believe love is rational, or earned, or deserved. But human beings have never loved like that. Not really. Throughout history, from the tragic myths of Narcissus to the poetry of Rumi, from the confessionals of medieval mystics to the confessions of modern therapy, the story has remained eerily consistent. Love is not a clear mirror. It is a haunted one. It shows us who we long to become, and who we are afraid we already are. This is why the question matters so much today, because we are surrounded by performances. We have become excellent at presenting who we want others to fall in love with. But Jung's insight cuts through that illusion. He invites us to turn inward and ask, what are they really seeing in me? And perhaps more importantly, why am I drawn to the people I am? This exploration is not just about romance. It is about identity, authenticity, and the psychological games we all play, often without knowing it. So in this video, we will go deep into history, into psychology, into the human heart. We will uncover the two reasons people truly fall in love with you, and what it says not only about them, but about you. Let's begin the unraveling. Love has always been a mystery wrapped in poetry and paradox. Ancient cultures wrote epics about it, religions tried to sanctify it, and philosophers tried, often in vain, to explain it. But behind every tale of romance, seduction, or divine union lies a deeper question. What exactly are we falling in love with? To understand this, we need to go back, far back, to the ancient Greeks who believed in the concept of eros, a divine madness. Eros was not simply desire, it was a form of spiritual possession. When you were in love, they said, you were no longer yourself. You were overtaken by a force, by a god, by something other than reason. Plato, in his Symposium, spoke of love as a ladder. At the bottom was physical attraction. At the top, the love of pure truth. But even he knew that love, in its rawest form, reveals more about the lover than the beloved. Across the ocean, the Hindu tradition had already developed a sophisticated language for love. In Bhakti Yoga, love for the divine was seen as the ultimate path to liberation. But here's the twist. This love often mirrored human romantic love. The longing, the surrender, the obsession. It was all part of the journey toward union with the self or the divine. In this model, what we love outside ourselves is ultimately what we are trying to reclaim within. Carl Jung's insights echo these ancient philosophies. He believed that we carry unconscious images, what he called archetypes, and we project these onto others. In love, we do not see clearly. We see symbolically. We meet someone, and without knowing why, we feel drawn to them, sometimes irresistibly, not because of who they are, but because of what they represent to us internally. They become the vessel for our inner narrative. Jung spoke specifically about two powerful forces, the anima and animus, the feminine and masculine energies within each of us. He said that when we fall in love, we often project our inner anima or animus onto the other person. That's why the love feels so magical, because we are not just meeting a person. We are meeting a part of ourselves we didn't know we were missing. This projection, he warned, is both beautiful and dangerous. Beautiful because it opens us up to transformation. Dangerous because it can trap us in illusion. You see this in myths across time. In the tale of Orpheus and Eurydice, Orpheus descends into the underworld to reclaim his beloved. But Jungians would say he was also descending into his own psyche, trying to reclaim a lost part of himself. Eurydice becomes a symbol, not just a woman, but an inner soul image. In the medieval courtly love tradition, knights would pledge themselves to ladies they barely knew. They would fight wars, compose sonnets, and die for them. But these women were not real in the way we understand people today. They were ideas, embodiments of purity, salvation, grace. The men were not in love with the woman herself. They were in love with what she represented to their own identity, their own inner struggle. Fast forward to today, and you might say not much has changed. The stage looks different, glowing screens instead of glowing swords, but the script is often the same. We still fall in love with the idea more than the individual. We swipe, we scroll, we fantasize, and often we see only what we want to see. But there's another layer, because this projection doesn't always come from our light. Sometimes it comes from our pain. Jung said people fall in love for two reasons. One is admiration, the light, the qualities they wish to develop in themselves, confidence, creativity, kindness. But the second reason is wound recognition, a hidden pattern, a familiar ache. We are drawn to people who reflect something unresolved in our own history. Think of it like this. You grew up feeling unseen. Then you meet someone who also seems emotionally unavailable. But your heart races. Why? Because unconsciously, your psyche believes, maybe this time, if I can get love from this person, I will finally prove I am lovable. It is not logical, it is psychological, it is ancestral. In this sense, love becomes a reenactment, a stage for healing, or repetition. That is why understanding love historically matters, because it is not just about two people meeting on a street or a dating app. It is about millennia of longing, generations of archetypes, cultural blueprints etched into our souls. The Sufi mystics wrote of the beloved, an ever-elusive figure who awakens the soul to divine truth. But even they knew the beloved was not real in the usual sense. The beloved was a mirror, a portal, a wound made holy. And this is the continuity across centuries. We keep falling in love with the same archetypes, the same wounds, the same fantasies. What has changed is the language, the rituals, the cultural dress. In the Victorian era, love was a moral contract. Marriages were arranged, but romanticism flourished in secret diaries and unsent letters. In the 1960s, love became rebellion, a form of self-expression. Today, love is both highly individualized and algorithmically optimized. But beneath it all, the ancient patterns still throb. We love what we need. We love what we lack. We love what reminds us of home, whether home was heaven or heartbreak. And this brings us to a crucial realization. Love is not just about compatibility. It is about consciousness, about what we are projecting and why. So when someone falls in love with you, or when you fall in love with them, ask, what is being awakened here? Is this love about growth? Or is it about reenacting a story you do not even remember writing? To truly understand love, not just romantically but as a human experience, You have to look at it across time, across psyche, across story. You have to see that love is not just about who they are, it is about what they reveal in you. And when you understand that, you begin to see the pattern, and with that pattern comes the power to choose differently. So, what truly happens in the human psyche when we fall in love? Beneath the butterflies and late-night texts, behind the chemistry and charm, something far more complex is taking place. Carl Jung offered a radical lens to understand this: the concept of projection. Projection is when the unconscious mind takes a part of itself, an emotion, a need, a fear, and places it onto someone else. When it comes to love, this projection becomes so intense, so vivid, that we believe it is real. We believe the other person is everything we have ever wanted. But often they are only holding the canvas. It is our psyche that is painting. Think of love as a psychological mirror. We are drawn to people who reflect two things: either the gold we have disowned or the wounds we have buried. This is the essence of the two reasons people fall in love with you. The first is idealization, when someone sees in you the traits they secretly wish to cultivate in themselves: your confidence, your sensitivity, your independence. You become their aspirational self. The second is repetition compulsion, a term coined by Freud but echoed in Jungian thought. This is when someone unconsciously recreates a painful pattern from childhood or past trauma in hopes of healing it. You remind them, often painfully, of someone they once tried to win love from: a cold parent, an unpredictable partner, and though they may not realize it, they are trying, through you, to resolve a story they have never finished telling themselves. Modern psychology supports these ideas. Attachment theory, for example, shows that early bonding patterns with caregivers deeply shape who we feel attracted to and how we behave in relationships. Someone with an anxious attachment style might fall for a distant, avoidant partner, not because they enjoy the emotional roller coaster, but because it unconsciously mirrors the inconsistency of their early love experience. The psyche is trying to get it right this time. This is not conscious, it is deep wiring, but it explains why someone may fall in love with you, not for who you are, but because you activate something ancient in them. You match their map, their myth, their emotional GPS. In Jungian psychology, these patterns are called complexes: a mother complex, a father complex, a savior complex. These are not just ideas. They are inner characters, charged with emotion and memory. When activated, they take over the personality. Love, then, becomes a stage for the complex to play out its old drama. You see this in how people describe their lovers. She just felt so familiar. He understood me without saying a word. I do not know why, but I could not stay away. That familiarity is often not about shared values or interests. It is about psychological resonance. The other person vibrates at the same emotional frequency as your unhealed self. This is why relationships can feel so intense and yet so confusing. Because you are not only relating to the person in front of you, you are also relating to your internal history. Even the ancient myths reflect this. In the story of Psyche and Eros, Psyche falls in love with a god she is forbidden to see. She is told to love him blindly. But one night, curiosity wins, and she lights a lamp to look upon his face. He disappears. The love crumbles, and her journey to win him back becomes a journey into her own soul. This myth, Jung would say, is about consciousness. The moment love is seen clearly, without projection, without fantasy, it changes. The spell breaks, and then the real work of relationship begins. Modern neuroscience even backs this up. The dopamine rush of new love activates the brain's reward system, the same circuitry as cocaine. But this phase is temporary. Eventually, the brain adjusts. The fantasy fades, and what is left is not always romantic. It is real. That is when love either deepens or disappears. Here's another important concept: mirroring. From early childhood, we learn who we are by how others reflect us. A loving gaze teaches us we are worthy. A harsh voice teaches us we are a burden. In relationships, especially romantic ones, we still seek that reflection. We want someone to show us our worth, to validate our identity, to complete the sentence we never finished as children. This is why people fall in love with those who reflect their emotional needs. But this reflection is not always healthy. Sometimes it is distorted. If you grew up earning love through people-pleasing, you might feel most attracted to someone who is hard to please. If you were shamed for your needs, you may find yourself drawn to someone emotionally unavailable, because it confirms your belief that needing too much pushes people away. These patterns are not fate. They are invitations. The psyche brings them up for healing, but only if we are willing to look. In a more symbolic framework, Jung might say we are not just seeking love, we are seeking integration. When someone falls in love with you, it might be because you represent the missing part of their psyche. You are their inner opposite, their unexplored potential, and in loving you, they are trying to reclaim a part of themselves. This is the spiritual potential of love, not just companionship, but wholeness, not just pleasure, but transformation. Sufi poet Hafiz once wrote, "The sun never says to the earth, 'You owe me.' Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole sky. But most of us are not ready for that kind of love, because it requires seeing ourselves fully. It requires knowing the difference between love and projection, between admiration and dependency, between healing and reenacting. So what does all this mean? It means that when someone falls in love with you, they may be loving your light, or your shadow, your possibility, or their fantasy, your wholeness, or their wound. It means that love is never just about now. It is also about then. The past lives in the present, and unless we make it conscious, we will keep choosing the same story over and over again, calling it fate. But there is hope in this, because once you become aware of these patterns, once you name the projection, see the complex, recognize the mirror, you create space. And in that space, real love can begin. Not the love of illusions, but the love of seeing. The love that says, "I see you not as a fantasy, but as a soul, and I let you see me too." To truly grasp why people fall in love with you only for two reasons, we must explore not just the surface but the hidden architecture beneath our emotions. Love, as Carl Jung revealed, is rarely as simple or pure as we imagine. Instead, it often arises from profound unconscious dynamics. These dynamics shape the way we see others and ourselves, and influence the relationships we build throughout our lives. The first reason, projection, is an ancient psychological mechanism. When you meet someone, your psyche instinctively searches for pieces of itself reflected in that person. This is not mere admiration, but a deep, almost magnetic force where your unconscious paints the other with the colors of your own inner world. The qualities you desire, the traits you have suppressed, or the parts you have disowned find expression in the other person's presence. Consider how this works through a modern lens. Imagine you grew up in an environment where emotional warmth was scarce. As an adult, you might find yourself irresistibly drawn to someone whose kindness and affection seem boundless. To you, they embody what you never received. Your mind, unconsciously longing to fill that gap, projects an idealized image onto them. You see not just their actual behavior, but the nurturing parent or soulmate you long for. This projection feels like love, but it is really a reflection of your unmet needs. It is a bridge your psyche builds to heal a past wound. Jung called these bridges complexes, clusters of emotions and memories linked to unresolved experiences. These complexes activate whenever we encounter triggers in others, and love can be one of the most potent triggers. The second reason, falling in love because of someone's wounds, often manifests in a subtle, almost paradoxical way. You may be drawn to someone who mirrors your own pain or unresolved conflicts. This is sometimes called the wounded healer dynamic. The other person's vulnerability activates your desire to nurture, protect, or complete them. You might feel a deep sense of empathy, combined with a yearning to fix or save them. Historically, this dynamic appears in countless stories and myths. Think of the archetype of the tragic lover, the person attracted to the one who is damaged, broken, or incomplete. These relationships are intense and fraught with tension because they stir our own wounds as much as they engage our hearts. They challenge us to confront aspects of ourselves we usually avoid. What makes this dynamic complex is that it blurs the boundary between love and need. When we fall for someone because they reflect our wounds, the relationship often becomes a battleground for unresolved emotions. This can create cycles of dependency, codependency, or emotional enmeshment. Instead of growing individually, the partners may reinforce each other's pain, perpetuating suffering rather than healing. Modern psychology helps us see these patterns clearly. Attachment theory, for example, explains how early childhood experiences shape our adult relationships. If your early caregivers were inconsistent or emotionally unavailable, you might develop an anxious or avoidant attachment style. These styles influence how you seek and maintain intimacy, often repeating the patterns that originally caused pain. Jungian psychology adds another layer by emphasizing the process of individuation, becoming the whole person you were meant to be. Individuation requires facing your shadows, the unconscious parts of yourself that include your fears, insecurities, and unresolved wounds. Only by integrating these shadows can you truly love and be loved without projection or neediness. This process is mirrored in myths like the story of Psyche and Eros. Psyche's journey through trials and self-discovery symbolizes the path toward authentic love. She must descend into darkness, confront challenges, and emerge transformed. This is the journey we all face when we strive to move beyond unconscious patterns and experience love in its fullest, most genuine form. From a personal reflection standpoint, recognizing these two reasons offers a profound invitation. When you notice that someone is attracted to you because you embody a projection or trigger a wound, you have a choice. You can resist by becoming defensive, or you can embrace the awareness as a chance for healing. For instance, if you realize that a partner Ida's admiration is linked to an idealized image rather than your true self, it allows you to gently invite them to see the whole you, including imperfections and struggles. This can be scary because it risks rejection, but it also creates space for deeper connection and authenticity. Similarly, if you find that your attraction to someone stems from their woundedness, it can be an opportunity to explore your own unresolved pain. Instead of trying to fix them, you can work on healing within yourself. And this doesn't mean abandoning care or compassion, but recognizing the limits of what one person can do for another, archetypes healing. These insights also affect how we understand self-love. Often, we look for validation and acceptance outside ourselves because we have not yet learned to fully embrace our own complexity. When you cultivate self-compassion and inner wholeness, the need to attract love for the wrong reasons diminishes. You become more grounded, more present, and more capable of discerning genuine love. In the modern age, the challenge is magnified by social media and cultural narratives that glorify romantic love while minimizing its psychological depth. We are bombarded with images of perfect relationships and effortless passion. This sets unrealistic expectations and obscures the work that love truly requires, the work of self-awareness, vulnerability, and growth. But history offers encouragement. Across time, sages, poets, and philosophers have recognized love as a transformative journey, not just a feeling to be had. The Sufi poet Rumi described love as a process that burns away illusion to reveal the soul's true light. The Buddha taught that attachment leads to suffering, but that mindful awareness can liberate us. This synthesis of ancient wisdom and modern science offers hope. It shows that by learning to see love's underlying mechanisms, projection, and wound recognition, we can change how we relate to others and to ourselves. To pause here and reflect, what projections might you be placing on those you love? What wounds might you be drawn to in others and in yourself? How can these insights inspire you to seek a love that is real, healing, and whole? In closing this additional reflection, remember that love is never about perfection or escape. It is about presence, the willingness to show up as you are and to see others as they truly are. It is about courage, curiosity, and above all, compassion. The journey toward this kind of love is lifelong, but it is also the most rewarding journey you will ever take. For in learning to love consciously, you learn to live fully and to become the person you were always meant to be. When love is based on projection, whether it be idealization or the replaying of old wounds, the consequences ripple far beyond the initial rush of passion. It affects not only the individuals involved, but also their sense of self, their emotional health, and their ability to build genuine connections. The impact is subtle, yet profound, like a slow current pulling beneath the surface of a seemingly calm lake. Imagine, for a moment, that you fall deeply in love with someone because they embody qualities you admire but do not fully possess. Their confidence fills the gaps in your own. Their warmth masks your loneliness. Their charm hides your self-doubt. At first, this can feel like magic. You feel seen, desired, even transformed. But over time, a strange dissatisfaction creeps in, because the person you loved was not fully who they appeared to be. It was your projection, and the real person, with their flaws and complexities, starts to show. This disillusionment can be painful. It forces you to confront the gap between fantasy and reality. For some, this becomes a cycle. Falling in love, idealizing, facing disappointment, withdrawing, and then repeating the pattern with someone new. The emotional exhaustion can be profound. It can erode self-esteem, leading to questions like, why do I never seem to find the one? Why does love always feel like a game I am losing? On the other side, when someone falls in love with you because you trigger their unresolved wounds, the dynamic is equally fraught. They may oscillate between closeness and distance, affection and avoidance. This push-pull dynamic mirrors childhood emotional neglect or trauma, but in adult relationships, it becomes a source of confusion and pain. You may feel as if you are chasing a shadow, desperate to fill an unfillable void. This is not just romantic. These patterns impact friendships, family relationships, and even work dynamics. The unconscious scripts we carry shape how we interact with the world. For instance, someone who fears abandonment may overcompensate with people-pleasing, losing their own boundaries in the process. Someone who equates love with sacrifice may stay in toxic relationships, believing that suffering is the price of affection. Historically, these consequences have been observed and dramatized in myths and stories because they are universal human experiences. Consider the Greek tragedy of Medea, who is consumed by a love turned bitter by betrayal and unmet needs. Or the tale of King Arthur and Guinevere, whose love was entangled with loyalty, power, and heartbreak. These stories are not just entertainment. They are symbolic maps of the emotional terrain love navigates. The emotional consequences also reach deeply into identity. When you love someone for who they seem to be, rather than who they truly are, you risk losing sight of yourself. You might mold yourself to fit their expectations or the image they desire. Over time, your authentic self becomes diluted. This erosion of identity can lead to anxiety, depression, or a pervasive feeling of emptiness. Moreover, the social consequences are no less significant. When love is based on projection, it can lead to misunderstandings, miscommunications, and conflicts. Without the foundation of genuine understanding, relationships struggle to sustain themselves. The social support that healthy relationships offer diminishes, leaving people isolated despite being in connection. This isolation can feel particularly acute in a society that glamorizes romantic love as the ultimate. Source of happiness. The paradox is that many who appear to be in love may actually be trapped in cycles of unmet expectations and emotional survival. This gap between appearance and reality fuels loneliness and alienation on a collective scale. Emotionally, individuals caught in these patterns often experience a roller coaster of hope and despair. The exhilaration of new love may be followed by the sinking realization of unmet needs or repeating patterns. Over time, this can impact one's ability to trust, not just others, but oneself. If love always brings confusion or pain, it is natural to question whether it is worth the risk. Yet, as Jung taught us, these consequences are also opportunities in disguise. The emotional pain signals where healing is needed. It invites us to look inward, to meet the parts of ourselves we have been avoiding. It calls us to become conscious of our projections and complexes. It urges us to grow beyond unconscious repetition. Recognizing these patterns allows for a profound transformation, not just in relationships, but in the relationship with ourselves. We begin to reclaim boundaries, clarify desires, and cultivate self-compassion. We learn that love is not about fixing someone else, but about healing and integrating our own psyche. In this light, even the most painful love stories from history can serve as guides. The tragic romance, the heroic quests, the mystical unions, they all hold mirrors up to our own struggles with love's complexity. They show us that love, at its core, is a dance between vulnerability and strength, illusion and truth. So, when we understand the impact and consequences of loving through projection or wound recognition, we are better equipped to navigate love with wisdom. We can begin to distinguish between the light we wish to see and the shadows we fear. We can open the door to love that is not only passionate but grounded, not only thrilling but steady. This is the heart of emotional intelligence in love, the courage to see clearly, to love deeply, and to grow authentically. If you have ever felt caught in the repetitive cycle of love that starts with euphoria but ends in confusion or pain, you are not alone. The patterns that Carl Jung illuminated, projection, complexes, mirroring, are part of the human condition, woven deep into our psyche. Yet understanding them is the first step toward transformation. The next step is learning how to move from unconscious repetition to conscious love. One of the most powerful tools to begin this journey is self-awareness. Awareness is the light that dispels projection's shadows. When you start noticing the stories you tell yourself about others and about yourself, you create a space between impulse and reaction. In that space, choice becomes possible. Try this simple yet profound practice, the Journal of Projections. Whenever you notice strong feelings of attraction or aversion to someone, pause and write down what qualities you see in them. Then ask yourself, could I be seeing something about myself in them? Is this person reminding me of a past experience, a wound, or an ideal? This exercise is not about blaming or guilt. It is about curiosity and compassion. It helps you decode the language of your unconscious. Over time, this practice builds emotional literacy, enabling you to recognize when love is rooted in fantasy or need, rather than reality and mutual respect. Another approach is mindfulness meditation, a way to observe your thoughts and emotions without becoming them. Through mindfulness, you learn to witness the ebb and flow of feelings like desire, jealousy, or fear without being swept away. This cultivates emotional regulation, one of the cornerstones of healthy relationships. On a psychological level, therapy can be transformative. Particularly, modalities such as cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and inner child work help to uncover and heal the wounds that fuel unhealthy relationship patterns. Therapy provides a safe space to explore your complexes and to rewrite old narratives that no longer serve you. Traditional wisdom traditions offer complementary tools. The ancient philosophy of Stoicism, for instance, teaches detachment, not in the sense of coldness, but in the sense of seeing things clearly without being enslaved by our desires or fears. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." In the context of love, this means learning to love without losing yourself, to appreciate another's light without dimming your own, to recognize that your wholeness does not depend on being completed by someone else. From the mystical Sufi tradition, we find practices of self-inquiry and surrender. The poet Rumi invites us to see love as both a flame and a mirror, a force that burns away illusions while revealing the true self beneath. Surrender here does not mean giving up power, but opening to transformation. Practically, cultivating healthy boundaries is essential. Boundaries help to protect your emotional space and ensure that love is mutual rather than one-sided. Saying no, expressing needs clearly, and recognizing when a relationship drains rather than nourishes you are acts of self-love. Consider the metaphor of a garden. If you plant a seed in poor soil, the plant struggles to grow. If you nurture the soil with care, the seed thrives. Your boundaries are the soil of your relationships. Without fertile ground, love cannot flourish. Daily habits also matter. Practicing gratitude shifts focus from what is lacking to what is present. Taking time to connect with yourself through walks, reading, or creative expression strengthens your sense of identity. These practices root you in your own life, making you less likely to lose yourself in another. Another powerful practice is the art of active listening, not just hearing words but sensing the emotional undercurrents. This creates deeper connection and reduces misunderstandings. It invites both partners to show up authentically, beyond masks and projections. Remember, transformation in love is gradual. There is no overnight fix, no perfect formula. It is a journey of small steps, of falling and getting up, of learning to love with eyes wide open. At the heart of this journey is the cultivation of self-compassion. You will encounter your shadows, the parts you dislike or fear. You will face old wounds that ache. Meeting these parts with kindness rather than judgment is revolutionary. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." To love consciously is to welcome both light and shadow in yourself and in others. Ultimately, when you embrace this path, you shift from being a victim of unconscious love patterns to becoming a co-creator of relationships grounded in truth and growth. You open the possibility of love that heals rather than wounds, that frees rather than confines. So, take a deep breath. Step gently but boldly into your own heart's landscape. The love you seek is waiting, not in illusions or repetition, but in the radiant truth of who you are becoming. As we come to the close of this exploration, it's worth pausing to reflect on what we have uncovered. Love is one of the most powerful forces in human life, capable of profound joy, but also deep confusion and pain. The reasons people fall in love with you, as Carl Jung and modern psychology reveal, are often rooted in something much deeper than what meets the eye. They are entwined with unconscious projections, emotional wounds, and the timeless human quest for wholeness. Understanding this does not make love less beautiful. Rather, it makes it more real. It strips away the illusions that can trap us and opens the door to connection that is authentic and liberating. When you recognize that love often comes because someone sees in you a reflection of their own inner world, whether a light they aspire to or a shadow they fear, you begin to see love as a mirror, not just a feeling. This mirror is both a gift and a challenge. It invites you to see yourself more clearly, to become aware of your own projections, and to heal the old wounds that influence how you give and receive love. It asks you to step beyond the fairy tale and into the deeper story. The story of human growth, of soul meeting soul in a dance of transformation. Historically, this theme has echoed across centuries and cultures. From the tragic lovers of ancient myths to the mystics who spoke of love as the path to enlightenment, we see that love is not simply about union, but about integration, bringing together the fractured parts of ourselves in a deeper harmony. In our modern world, where relationships are often hurried, commodified, or distorted by social media, this ancient wisdom is more urgent than ever. We long for connection, yet we often settle for echoes of love that leave us feeling hollow. But the potential to break free from these patterns is within reach. By cultivating self-awareness, practicing compassion, and embracing the shadows as well as the light, you can move toward a love that sustains rather than depletes. You can learn to distinguish between the allure of projection and the courage of presence. You can become someone who loves and is loved not because of fantasy or need, but because of honest seeing and deep acceptance. This journey is not easy. It asks for patience, vulnerability, and the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. But it is also a journey toward freedom. The freedom to love without fear, to be known without pretense, and to grow into the fullness of your own being. So, ask yourself now, how often have you loved someone not for who they truly are, but for who you wished them to be? How might your life change if you began to see love as a mirror reflecting your own path toward wholeness? As you carry these reflections forward, remember that love is not a destination, but a living, breathing process. It is a sacred dialogue between two souls, each learning to hold their light and shadow with courage and grace. In this space of awareness and acceptance, love becomes a powerful force for healing, both of the self and the world. As we reach the end of this deep exploration, I want to invite you to pause and reflect on what you have discovered about love, projection, and the journey toward authentic connection. This space we share is not just about ideas. It is about growth, healing, and reclaiming your personal power in relationships and in life. You and I both know that love is complex. It can lift us to unimaginable heights and challenge us to confront our deepest fears. But the power to navigate this complexity lies within you. When you begin to see love not as something that happens to you, but as a path you consciously walk, everything changes. You become the author of your own story, shaping your relationships with integrity, awareness, and purpose. If this resonates with you, I invite you to join this community, a place where we explore together the timeless wisdom of psychology, history, and philosophy, blended with practical tools for self-mastery. Here, we go beyond superficial content. We dive deep, reflect meaningfully, and grow authentically. By subscribing, you are choosing to invest in your emotional intelligence and personal evolution. You are committing to a journey of self-discovery that honors both your shadows and your light. Together, we can learn to set boundaries, regulate emotions, and lead lives filled with purpose and connection. So, ask yourself, are you ready to reclaim your power, master the self, and live with greater clarity and heart? If the answer is yes, then subscribe now. Let's continue this journey, not just to understand love, but to transform how we love and how we live. Because real growth happens in the space between awareness and action. And you are not alone on this path. We are walking it together.